My name is Leonard Bauer, Len Bauer. Everybody calls me Len. I live in Campbell County, Kentucky, the southern end, south of Alexandria, down by the old town of Claryville. And we live in a development called Pond Creek Crossing, and I live on Mallard Drive in Pond Creek. We built this house about 12 years ago. So we were first ones to come here, and we love the area.
I know you grew up in Dayton, Kentucky, and you went to all of your schooling in Dayton?
Yes,
is that right?
I was born in Dayton in the old Spears Hospital, and I went to Lincoln Elementary School in that part of the town, which that school ultimately burned down, but there's a new one there now. And then in the first grade I started in at 8th Avenue Elementary School, which is where the high school is. I went all 12 years in the same building. Graduated from Dayton High School in 1959.
And I know that your wife, Bonnie, and you were school sweethearts.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you met her?
Well, I met her actually when I was a sophomore.
Oh.
I was going to ask her to go out, and it was in biology class. I said, she's coming in, I'm going to ask her. But I didn't do it. You know why? She wasn't there. She had gotten the flu or something, and she was off for about a week. So I ended up going to a hay ride with the scouts or whatever it was, stag. It turned out, I found out later on, when we got to know each other better, she wouldn't have been able to go out with me anyway as a sophomore. She could not date until she was 16. She was only 15 then, so she would have turned me down.
Well, love takes its own triangles, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Now I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your family in Dayton. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, I have one natural brother. We share the same mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father were divorced when I was in the first grade, and she had custody of my brother and I. And I went to see my dad on the weekends over in Covington. He lived in Covington. He was a Navy veteran from World War II. He came back, and it just didn't work out. They just decided to split. It was amicable. My mother remarried in 1949 to the Chief of Police of Dayton, Kentucky, John Ryan Moran. And I have a brother and a sister from that union. My father remarried, lived in Covington, a fine lady, best stepmother a guy could ask for. And I have two sisters from that marriage.
Well, you have a very good extended family, and it sounds like you're very fond, and they're fond of you.
Yes, we don't, there's no stepbrother, stepsister, we're just brothers and sisters.
Now I'm going to ask you a little bit about Mr. Moran, who was the police chief.
Yes.
I understand he was the longest elected police chief.
That is correct. He served as police chief. He has a certificate from the state of Kentucky signed by the governor, the longest elected police chief, and it ran about 40 years, and he was elected to office. There was no civil service back then, so that goes all the way back to the 1930s, all the way up through 1972 or so when he retired.
Yeah. Now, as your stepfather being the police chief, did that make your life a little bit tougher among your friends or anything?
It made it tough at times. It made it tough at times because when your stepdad's, you're telling on everybody this, which I didn't, and he didn't expect me to.
Yeah.
He was an Irish Catholic, but he did not try and influence my brother or my other brother. Either way, you know, he didn't try, but I learned from him. I learned obedience, and he went to Mass every day before he went on duty. Didn't require me to. I went to church in Covington. I was a Protestant.
With your dad?
With my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a kind of a split family. A lot of folks in this area do, where half of us are Catholic, half of us are Protestant, and we're very ecumenical.
Well, that's
just
great.
the way it works out.
Well, that's quite an honor to have been elected 40 years running. Today, it seems like it's pretty hard for a official to keep a job more than 2 years because somewhere along the line, they either have something in their past that somebody dug up or, you know, politics being what it is. And we're not going to talk too much politics here, but I just want to congratulate you on having such a family of law-abiding and high-principled, and I'm sure it reflected on your life. Now, when you were in high school and you and Bonnie were dating somewhat, did you have a job or anything when you got off of school in the evening, or?
No, I did not. I wanted to. I wanted to set up pins at the bowling alley, work at a store, this or that. But my stepfather, my mother said, you'll work long enough. We want you to enjoy school activities, play sports, which I played football at Dayton. And we want you to grow up. If you need money, you work around here and you'll get the money. You don't need to work in a place late at night or anything like that. So they didn't want me to. Now, however, my real dad, as I'll call him, my father had his own business. And in summers, I would help him in his heating business. He was a heating contractor. It's the toughest boss I ever worked for in my life.
I've heard that from other folks who work for their parents.
And when we went into a house, when you went into the basement, and of course, my job to clean up afterwards, the basement had to be cleaner after we left the basement than it was before we went in there to work. Doesn't matter. If it's not your dirt or not, it's coming out of here. And
Yeah.
I did it.
And that's a philosophy that I think a lot of contractors and people in that time frame enjoyed. And you leave things a little bit better than you found it. Now I'm going to ask you about your first car. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. My first car, well, when I was graduated from high school, I had a job waiting for me. It wasn't waiting for me, but I was able to secure a job at the old Wiedemann Brewery as a laboratory technician.
Wow.
Was graduated on a Wednesday night, went to work the following Monday. So I went right to work. So I had a job, and I wasn't allowed to drive. My stepfather said, until you can pay your own insurance, buy your own car, pay your own expenses on that car, you don't drive, son. And I didn't. So I purchased a car. It was a 1949 Plymouth Special Deluxe two-door coupe.
So if you graduated in ~59, you had a 10-year-old car, but that was a pretty new car in those days.
It was. And then I had to start learning to be a mechanic.
Yeah.
To keep it running.
You know, the good thing about, a lot of people say they don't make them like they used to, but I personally think cars are better now than they were. I haven't had a flat tire in probably 20 years. I had an older car too. I changed a lot of tires, became a mechanic, but we learned and we moved on from there, and we had respect because it was coming out of our own pocket.
That's right.
Sometimes today I think kids have it a little bit, mom and dad decide they're going to give them a car, and it's not a 10-year-old car. But, so do you remember, Bonnie, the car? A lot of dates, I guess, in that car?
Very well. And one of the reasons you needed a car, how many steps did you have to go up and down to get to my house?
I lived up at 518. Well, for most of my life, I lived at 8th and O'Fallon in Dayton, which was down not 2 blocks from school.
Right.
And in my junior year, my parents bought a house up at 518 Belmont in Dayton, which was up on the hill, up where the tank is up there, the water tower, up there. But to see Bonnie, I had to go down Dayton Avenue, and then there were steps that went all the way down to the railroad track. And there was a lot of steps. So in those days, I could run down those steps and I could run back up them. So I said, I'm going to get a car. And I would drive down, I could see her, we could drive and come back up. So and plus I was getting a little tired of riding the bus to the brewery every day to go to work. So I thought, I'll get me a car. So I found one for $175.
I'll never forget the night we were out on the date and it snowed, and we were coming down I guess that would have been Dayton Avenue,
Yeah.
sideways.
They
Everything's a hill in
The
Dayton.
roads were not treated in those. They put cinders and
Cinders.
clinkers from the incinerator on the roads, and that's all you got. So, but at any rate, the Plymouth, it was a tough car. The hood would leak. The engine was a flathead 6, and the dimples where the spark plugs set in. They'd fill up with water. So I'd have to stop. We'd be on. I'd have to open up the hood and get out, and I had rags. I'd wipe all that water out, and then I popped the distributor cap off, and I had a can with a can.
Spray can of ether?
No, it had a rag in there with gasoline, just a little bit of gasoline in there. So I dry out the inside of the distributor. It kind of worked like WD-40 does nowadays, I guess, and a little 6-volt system. Finally, it would start. So I got tired of that. So I got a couple of raises, received a couple of raises at the brewery, and I saw me a real nice '56 Mercury Montclair.
A classic.
On a lot in Newport. So I wanted to buy the car. She says, "Son, you can't buy this car. You can't get credit. You're 1A. You could be drafted. We can't, So I said, okay, well, what if I got my dad to, yeah, get your dad. So he went with me. We went up to the Bank of Dayton and signed a note with me, and I was able to buy the car. And I paid it off in that fashion.
Then I had to beat the girls off of him.
Well, I would think he had
It was a good-looking
It was a
car,
chick magnet.
and it was a fast car.
Yeah.
Wasn't a convertible, but it was a hardtop. That was close enough for me.
So how long were you out of high school and working before you actually got married?
Well, I'll tell you that story.
All right.
We had gone together until maybe a year after high school, and then we broke up.
We started dating in
We
1959.
started in 1959 on our senior trip to Washington, D.C. and New York. But I didn't like it too much, but she was doing the right thing. Let's see some other people. Let's don't rush into anything here. And so we did. We didn't see each other for
You're being too
the
kind.
better part of 3 years. I dated other people. She dated other people.
I was an only child, and my mother was mean and hateful.
To boys? Or to you?
She adored him,
Well,
and I figured something had to be wrong with him for my mother to like him.
If she liked it.
And that's why we broke up.
I liked her.
that's certainly an interesting philosophy. I've never heard of that, but it...
Well, Mother had 6 brothers,
Uh-huh.
and she liked to choose my friends, and I can remember agonizing over it. But I was so convinced that because my mother thought the sun rose and set in him, there had to be something wrong with him.
Well, she was probably accurate. Okay, so you survived the mother,
The breakup.
the breakup.
So, okay, so long about this time now, we're getting up to about 1962, I'd left the brewery. I decided, now, beer's good to drink, but it's part of my heritage, but I want to do something. So I'd gone to work for a loan company in Bellevue, Kentucky, and learned the small loan business. Became an assistant manager. In August of 1963, Bonnie and I became engaged. Our plan was to get married the following August because my parents had been married in August and her parents were married in August.
They were married on the same day, August 26th.
I was an assistant manager. I'd gotten raises. I had my first new car. I had a 1962 Chevy 2 Nova.
Wow.
It was
King of the world.
life was
It's
good.
in high
We had
cotton.
furniture and layaway. Everything was planned. About the middle of September in 1963, I received a letter, a very official letter, from the President of the United
Greetings.
States, from John F. Kennedy, said, "We want you to do something for your country." Oh my, you'd think it was Panic City. Because I thought about the military a number of times before. I had, before I started my junior year, my stepfather and I went down to see Brent Spence. Brent Spence, the bridge is named, Congressman Spence, the bridge is named after him. They said, "Brent, what can you do for this young man to maybe get him into one of the service academies?" And I wanted the Naval Academy. I wanted to be Navy. So yeah, I have a couple appointments at the Naval Academy. Did the paperwork, got the appointments. Okay, so then I start receiving all these pre-tests that you have to take. And my mathematics was not up to snuff. My math was not. And in those days, the Naval Academy, the service academies, that was all engineering. You had to be an engineer.
Right.
That's what it was. And this math was, so in my junior year, I said, "I'm not going to be able to do this." Told my stepfather, he said, "Well, let's go down and see the congressman." So I went back down. I did the honorable thing. I says, as much as I'd love to go to the United States Naval Academy, Congressman Spence, please take this appointment back, if you would, and give it to somebody that deserves it. "What do you mean you don't deserve it? We'll get you a tutor, we'll get..." No. So I turned in the appointment. Maybe a turning point in life, I don't know. Maybe I could have done it, I'll never know. So I did that. And then later on, I thought, well, maybe I'll join the Army. I started hearing things about helicopters and things like that, and the Vietnam thing was starting to pick up. And I said, I wouldn't mind doing that, but no, I'll end up carrying a rifle and slogging through the mud. No, so I didn't do that. And then even back when I was working in the brewery, I had a hankering. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I thought that'd be the thing to do. Those guys are tough. I could join the Marine Corps, and I was in pretty good shape. You know, I had been an athlete and all that. So there was a World War II Marine there. His name was Kenny Brockman. He's gone now, I'm sure. He was an electrician at the brewery, and he was a World War II Marine. And one day in the laboratory, Kenny was in there, and I said, "Kenny, would you advise me to go into the Marine Corps?" Dumb question. He says, "Good Lord, son, I wouldn't advise anybody to go into the Marine Corps. Why, we'd have shot our own officers if they would have been in front of us when we hit the beach. Forget that." And I did. I took that advice, and I did
good advice, I
forget
think.
it. So anyway, I get the letter, and this caused turmoil in the family. My mother says, "Get married, they're not taking married men." I think her mother is, "Get married, they're not taking married men." I said, "Well, hey, that's a deal. Okay, we'll get married now." I just, you know, I was like 22 years old then. Kind of old to be, you know, humping with 17, 18-year-olds. And this one had a level head, and she says, "As sure as we get married, rush the wedding, get married, they're going to change that law, and they're going to start taking married men. And then they're going to start taking married men with children." And she was prophetic. They did. They did start drafting married men. They start drafting men with children, one child. They were, in 1968, after Tet, they were drafting guys into the Marine Corps.
Absolutely.
So she was smart. She said, so I said, "All right, I'm just going to do it. Wherever it leads, it's 2 years. I can do that standing on my head." So anyway, then I received a notice to report in October for pre-induction physical.
So did you go to Fort Thomas?
Yes, that's where I took the pre-induction physical.
Because I think somewhere about 1965 or 66 is when they stopped.
They closed it.
Yeah.
They changed it. But this was one of the largest, they told us, this was one of the largest peacetime drafts since World War II. And so then I received orders to report on January the 6th, 1964, about 50 years ago. Went out to Fort Thomas. They gave us more tests and things of that nature out there. Gave us a set of orders, and there must have been, excuse me, there must have been 1,000 guys out there. Guys from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana. All these guys were coming together, and there must have been, I don't know how many you can get on a Greyhound bus. We went over the Greyhound terminal in Cincinnati, on the Greyhound terminal, and we'd been there, I think I had a report at 6 o'clock in the morning. At 1:30 we arrived at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
And I know you went down US 42,
Yep.
the snaky road that follows the river.
That's right. And get off that bus. And so all these guys, you know, and the hair and the civilian clothes, march right in there. We went into a big concrete block building with benches in there. In the front was a big box. It was a huge box. It looked like a coffin. And the first thing they said to us was, whatever you're carrying, guns, blackjacks, brass knuckles, cards,
illegal
dice,
drugs.
any whiskey, put it in this box. And you'd be surprised. Guys are jumping up, and you heard nunchucks going in there, and blackjacks and all that going on. I said, oh, my switchblade knives. I said, oh, Lord. and so then it was off to a repo depot and issued uniforms, and I still had civilian clothes on. They grabbed me out of the line in the mess hall one morning. He says, you're on KP. I was doing KP in civilian clothes. And finally, I slipped out the back door. I says, I'm out of here. I slipped out the back door and went back to my barracks. So finally, after the 0 week, then they marched us over to our company where we would take our basic training.
So you did all of basic at Fort Knox?
At Fort Knox. Everything, all the way through, and I actually was inducted with a good friend, a guy I knew before. He went to Highlands High School in Fort Thomas, but he lived in Dayton with his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
But we were friends, and we're still close friends. So, but they put him in a different company because his name started with K and mine started with B. But we'd see each other like on the weekends and
Sure.
or after training or whatever. But anyway, went through Knox and had some interesting experiences in basic training, as everybody does. That's the closest to combat you're going to come if you never do, is basic training. And these were still old World War II guys, Korean War guys. I remember we had a Korean War guy that taught us the bayonet, the spirit of the bayonet. And this guy was the real deal because he was in the hand-to-hand combat in Korea. And the most important thing he said you can learn, you remember the command? Whirl. If you hear a buddy say whirl, you turn around and give him a fight, because that's somebody's coming at your back.
Right.
Yeah, I've
Absolutely.
never forgotten that. And this guy, he had the scars to prove it.
And it probably saves a lot of lives if you get that in your mind. I encountered a Korean War veteran also in my basic training, and he had lost a couple of toes, but I'll tell you what, he was as tough as anybody but he was a caring individual, and I think most of us that survive basic training, there's somebody like that that got you where you are, and that carried through the rest of your career in the military.
It's character building. There's no doubt about it. You don't think of it at the time. You think, what in the world is happening to me? Hiking up Misery Hill and coming back down to Agony. They sent us out one morning very early. We did dismounted drill down in the field. And you know what that does to you after you march around with a full pack on and all that. Then we went out to the grenade range. Threw my first hand grenades. It was bitter. It was in January. This would probably be in February sometime. Bitter cold. The only time they ever let us put our POW caps down with the ear flaps, the only time they ever let us put those down.
Must have been extremely cold.
It was cold. and we're out on a hillside, getting ready to go to the grenade range. They bring hot chow out. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of slumgullion, but man, I ate it. And you went up and you hit your canteen cup. You remember your metal canteen cup? And they said, all right, you can have one half cup of coffee or 1/2 cup of hot chocolate. I said, a half cup of coffee. I went to the next guy. Give me a half cup of hot chocolate. And man, I looked at him, and this little KP, he put it, so I had half and half, and man, that's the only thing I think that kept me from freezing. And we went out there and we threw our grenades, and I still had the first pin of the grenade that I threw. It's up in my collection box. I slipped it in my pocket. I know that's illegal. I slipped it in my pocket.
Okay, after basic training in AIT, you eventually left Fort Knox.
Well, yes, I did. Now here's what's funny. After you complete your training at Fort Knox, and you've taken all your tests, during the testing at Fort Knox, they say, you stick around here. You're going to take the Officers Candidate School test. So I passed the OCS test. Okay? I said, hey, this might not be too bad. But I wasn't sure yet. You know, I'm going to get married. So at that point, after basic training, I says, no. They said, that's all right. We'll ask you again after you get your regular station. They only ask you 3 times.
Yeah. Now, did you have to be part of OCAS or OCS? Did you have to re-up for another year?
Yes, you
that
had to
was
take,
the thing.
you had
It turned
to
it
take
into a
a
3-year
short
stint.
and re-enlist. So instead of doing 2 years, that was all in my mind. You'd have to do 3 years, and at that time, you could. It was either artillery or infantry. And my math, I knew I wasn't going to get in artillery, even though I passed the OCS test, which there was a lot of math on it. It really blew my mind. There was a lot of math on it. I passed it, but I didn't. You know, that I'd been infantry down at Benning for sure. But at any rate,
Can I enter something here?
Sure.
He struggled so much worrying about math. He worked for Fifth Third Bank for 30 years.
Well,
30 years.
That makes sense.
30 years.
You probably had a lot of people under you that were pretty good
I'm a
at
ham
math.
radio operator, and I do formulas and things like that, algebra all the time. So anyway, you know, after basic, they give you your MOS. I say, fire.
That stands for Military Occupational
45J
Specialty.
Military Occupational 45J20, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. I said, that's cool. What's this MOS, Sarge? I asked I don't know. It's one of those new MOSs. I don't know what it is. I go home on my 2-week leave. And that 2 weeks goes fast. But I did have my fatigues tailored. Smarts look sharp, and you'll get less trouble. You know, I went to a tailor in Dayton, and they took up my fatigues. They used nylon thread that it wouldn't rip out and all this kind of stuff. And man, I was a strack soldier. Strack means straight away, highly trained, you know. So I still don't know what I'm going to. My mom said, "What are you going to be doing up there?" I said, "I don't know, studying something up there. It's the armament testing grounds." So I called a recruiter. Yeah, I got an MOS book. I says, "What's a 45J20?" He says, "Aircraft armament repair." I said, okay with me, because that told me I was going to have something to do with aviation. So it was a 10-week school up at Aberdeen, and they ran that place like OCS. It was multi-service. Our barracks sergeant was a Marine Corps gunny, gunnery sergeant.
Right.
Another sergeant was a Philippine Army Master Sergeant. It was over the Francisco Melican. I'll never forget his name. He told me he shot his first Japanese when he was 12 years old.
Tough life.
And it was all these force recon Marines were in the barracks, and a whole bunch of different guys from all over studying different things. And there was probably half a dozen of us in the armament school. So up there I studied, first of all, basic electronics, which was right up my alley, and that's probably why they sent me there. And I have to backtrack a minute. When my friend Ted, that I told you about from Highlands,
Yeah.
he was a a licensed radio technician. Later on, he became a broadcast engineer, retired from broadcast engineering. The way the Army did things then, maybe they do now. I had a minimal interest in electronics and minimal knowledge of electronics. They sent me to school. They sent him to the 1st Infantry Division as a door slammer on a 155 in the artillery.
Yeah.
Of course, later on, they figured out he knew how to use the slide rule, and they put him in fire control. But that was just the way.
Sometimes the logic of the military is,
It's-
those of us, we say, why? But everybody probably turned out a little bit better, and somehow or other, those tests, they may have unlocked something that we didn't even know we knew.
They were very, and you were half asleep when you took them anyway.
When I think back of when he, when they didn't, his family didn't want him to go, and when Len wasn't really thrilled about going, and I look back on those days now, and his love of the military, going all the way back to the Civil War, I would venture to say you can't come up with a question about military history that this man can't give you the answer to, and the whys and the wherefores.
Well,
And
that's great, because you may be our speaker next year at History Day.
What happened was, I was a draftee.
Mhm.
And when I went in, when you go in basic training, when you go into the mess hall, you holler out, U.S. That meant you were a draftee before you got fed. If you're a reserve, you hollered out ER, enlisted reserve. If you were National Guard, you hollered out NG. Or
And the one that we all-
regular Army. They were the guys that walked right out there and asked for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was a draftee. But going through, I start developing an appreciation of the Army going through training at Aberdeen Proving Ground. They had taken a chance on me to learn these systems and so on, to get these various armament systems on the helicopters, something that was very new to the Army, to get them to work and tell me how to handle it. And we also went through small arms school. It was probably at that time, maybe it is today, the best small arms school in the world. Studied the 30 caliber Browning
AR-15.
light machine gun and the M60.
Right.
The M60, that's my stock and trade. And I remember one of the first classes, they showed us how to break it down. They have an instructor in the front. Sergeant DiCarlo, Master Sergeant. He took that M60 and zip out with the boom with the operating spring, reversed it, put it back together. How about that? And I'll tell you this, when I got back from Vietnam, I'd have liked to went up there and timed it. I could have beat him. I could have got it back. I could have done it in the dark faster than he did it.
Sure.
I like Forrest Gump, But anyway, that taught me the appreciation of the military. And at that time, they had all kinds of collections up there. You could, on the weekends, you could go out and look at them, sit in them, walk. Look at all this stuff that's all been moved away now. It's all gone. But Anzio Andy was there that they bombarded Anzio with. The big German field gun was there. There was armor from all the different wars sitting out in a big field that you could go look at it and examine it.
Quite a bit of history. Now I'm going to ask you something about
Sure.
your founding, or when you went eventually to the 181st, is that correct?
11th Air Assault Division.
Okay.
What?
That had been something previous to that, right? Was that the first?
Okay. Here's how it broke down. You didn't know where you were going after you got out of Aberdeen. You would either go 3 places: straight to Vietnam, to the 11th Air Assault Division, or you would stay there as an instructor. Nice deal. Nice work if you can get it.
Sure.
And we did have one guy that did that, but he lived in Delaware. So I'm not sure how that happened, but it was good for him. We had a fellow in our group that was TDY from the 11th Air Assault Division.
TDY means temporary duty.
He was assigned to school, even though he was assigned to the 11th Air Assault Division in Fort Benning, Georgia. We had air assault. We knew all about the air assault before we left, and he spun it positive because he was very proud to be a part of that new division.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was an old division, it was the old 11th Airborne Division from World War II. It was the Air Assault Division, helicopters, air mobility, fixed-wing aircraft at that time, everything. So I said, man, I hope I go to the 11th Air. Sure enough, 7 of us went to Fort Benning, Georgia, to the 11th Air Assault Division. We went by train. Now that goes back to World War II. We took a train. A train actually came into the siding at Aberdeen, Maryland. They went into Baltimore. We had to get on another train. We went into Washington, to the old Washington train station. We got on a train that took us all the way down the East Coast to Atlanta, Georgia. We got on another train that took us down to Columbus, Georgia, where Fort Benning is.
Right.
So that's traveling just like my dad and uncles did in World War II.
And how long did it take you to make this trip from Aberdeen to Benning?
About 2 days.
2 days. And that's because the train's moving day and night.
Slept overnight, slept on a
And you
train.
didn't find the red dirt till daylight, right?
We saw a lot of that later.
Yeah.
And so they had a truck waiting there for us, a deuce and a half. And so out down 27 we go, but we don't go right to Fort Benning where the main post is and the jump tires and all these beautiful things, Lawson Army airfields. No, we went out to a place called Harmony Church. Old World War II barracks that we actually had to put back into condition. We had to make sidewalks and everything but they had this huge influx of people coming into the Army, and they had to train this division someplace. And a lot of the Army didn't like us because we were siphoning off a lot of personnel from the Army because you had to have, and I don't mean this as being bragging or anything like that, your GT score, your technical scores, had to be high enough even to get into the division.
Right.
And then also the 2nd Infantry Division was at Sand Hill at Fort Benning at the same time. So they would join with us on our maneuvers because we weren't a big enough division to have enough infantry to accomplish our mission.
Right.
So a lot of those guys were air assault qualified as well. And if I might move here, this is my picture.
Can I hold these up to the camera?
Sure. This is,
Len, is that picture with the helicopter the one that Chris thought was
Yes.
one of your friends?
And this is probably right out of basic training?
basic training.
Okay.
That's what I looked like as a young, slick-faced trooper.
Now, for those that were never in the military, the Army actually issues unbreakable glasses. These are his own civilian glasses. But there were guys that would act like Superman, and they would take those glasses off and throw them against the wall, and the girls would all scream.
I had my choice to wear my civilian glasses, which I did in basic training, but once I got to Fort Benning, then I started wearing the Army issue glasses because they issued me. Once I got to Fort Benning, I was assigned to the 227th Assault Helicopter Battalion. It was the first assault helicopter battalion in the world. It was led by a general by the name of, or a colonel, I'm sorry, by the name of John B. Stockton. He had taught French at the United States Military Academy, and he had this bird, that we called it a hoot owl, as our official distinctive insignia. And across its 7 feathers here at the bottom are the words pouvoir. That's French, P-O-U-V-O-I-R, meaning can do or able to do. So we became known as the Can Do Battalion. Now later on in the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam, long about 1968 or 69, they changed this, and the present day emblem has a red triangle in the center of it. That's means something in heraldry, spearhead or something, so they did change it. But this is the original, designed in late 1963. And that is the type of hat that we wore
On the airfields.
yep, and around the aircraft, officers and enlisted men. While I was at Fort Benning, our first sergeant was a World War II veteran, airborne. I would say probably 3/4 of our company was airborne qualified. They were paratroopers.
Right.
And he was strictly by the book, old Army. We had a thing called Soldier of the Month. They came to me, they said in March, I think it was in March, they said, Bauer, you're going up for Soldier of the Month. And man, that meant that I sat down with a master sergeant for 3 weeks every morning, from morning formation until noon, and I was drilled and indoctrinated on all points of military bearing and subjects. You will be the Soldier of the Month for the battalion, and I was.
It's quite an honor.
There it is.
Quite an honor, and I'm sure you would have done it without the tutoring, but sometimes the tutoring does help, a little refresher.
I even had to go into the orderly room and model my uniform in front of him, and always stand up, pull your coat down, all this stuff. Sit at attention. To this day, I will sit at attention.
Good for you.
Okay. And then once I received that, I was awarded a plaque by the company. Everybody that made Soldier of the Month was awarded this plaque. They hung in our day room, and when we left Fort Benning to go to Vietnam, they gave them to each individual, and I sent it home. This is made of wood. It was made in a craft shop.
There aren't many people that can boast that they've got the Soldier of the Month award. Honestly, I can tell you that for a fact.
It goes from there. This is the things that spurred me on to just about where I was ready. The person that made this was a Sergeant E5 by the name of Richard Coffey. He was my age. He went into the Army right after high school and had made E5, and he was an airborne. He was an infantry intelligence specialist, but he was assigned to our company. This is his air assault badge that he wore on his uniform.
Wow. He thought enough highly of you to...
He put it on the plaque. The air assault badge was awarded only in the 11th Air Assault Division. It preceded the Bullwinkle badge, which the air assault down at Fort Campbell, Kentucky wears now. This is the original air assault badge, and very few people have earned that.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to demonstrate all things air assault, including rappelling from a tower 60 feet above the ground. Now, unfortunately, Sergeant Coffey was transferred into the infantry when we became the 1st Cavalry Division, and he was killed in action in November of 1965, leading the squad.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness that you've got that memento of his life and his caring. Now, we want to get into the helicopter picture there.
Yes. One more thing, please.
All right.
If we might. I didn't get to stop at Soldier of the Month. I was requested. I was ordered. I was the orderly to General Harry W. O'Connor, General's orderly, March the 18th, 1965. Only one soldier in the division gets to do that. I was his orderly for a week. I put out his flag. This was a great man. He was a lieutenant colonel at Bastogne in the 101st Airborne Division. that actually handled handed the note from General McAuliffe that the Germans asked him to surrender, and General McAuliffe wrote nuts on it.
Nuts.
He was the soldier, the officer that handed it back to the Germans.
Wow.
He was one of the fathers of the air assault concept. He was a general. He flew his own aircraft. He was a rated pilot, and just the best man you'd ever want to meet. He was just terrific. I didn't mind at all being his orderly.
Well, and that's quite an honor too.
And you wore, for that week, you wore a special bracelet around your right arm, and it orderly to the commander general on it and the division. And people couldn't do enough for you. The company took up a collection. They gave me $100.
Wow. It's a lot of money in those days.
Yes, it was.
How come you didn't send that home?
Okay. Now, what happened? The 11th Air Assault Division reached a point where we felt our training was. We had just spent 75 days in the field in North Carolina. It was cold, it was wet, it was in the fall of the year, November, October, November, and the terrain, the wet, and then the dry and wet, flying in fog. One time we had to fly down the expressway and look at expressway signs to see where we were. It was the very same terrain that we found when we got to Central Highlands in Vietnam.
Absolutely.
There was method to that madness.
Now I'm going to hold this up a little bit, and I'd like you to explain about, this is the patch for the 1st Cavalry.
That's right. This is the 11th Air Assault Division. We exchanged colors with the 1st Cavalry Division and became the 1st Cavalry Division Air Mobile. They felt that air assault was was not politically correct in those days. We didn't want to assault anybody in Vietnam. We wanted to protect them with the cavalry. So the bigwigs in the Pentagon says, okay, the cavalry colors were in Korea. They exchanged flags. They retired the air assault colors. And on Division Day, they brought the 1st Cav colors over.
Now, military folks that are in combat or in hostile zones are allowed to wear a patch. Matter of fact, it's an honor to wear a patch on the right shoulder as
Yes.
opposed to the left.
That is correct.
On his right shoulder, the horse is facing where they have been.
That's right. If you've been in combat, the horse is looking backwards. Before you in combat, you wear it on your left shoulder, the horse is facing forward. Nowadays, with the blue uniforms, it's kind of hard to tell that. But in the old days, and still on the Army BDUs or fatigues now, you can tell if a soldier's been in combat if he has a patch on his right shoulder.
Yeah. Now, these are some of your medals that you were awarded
That's
and other.
some of the awards. Of course, the 11th Air Assault Division. We used to kid and say, well, that was for being in the 11th Air Assault for 6 months without going AWOL or ended up in the stockade or Leavenworth. But it required quite a bit to get this.
Yeah.
These are jump wings, which unfortunately I didn't go through jump school. I asked General Kennard about that. He said, we'll see what we can do. When I was his orderly, we'd like to get you jump qualified, but we have a lot of people to get jump qualified, so I can't make any promises. I shipped out to Vietnam before that happened.
I see.
But in honor of the paratroopers, I do keep that in there, and my friends that were paratroopers. And these I was awarded, of course, the National Defense Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, and most draftees do not receive a Good Conduct Medal. No. I got a Good Conduct Medal, and then there's a couple other decorations that you wear on your right side. They're unit decorations. We had the Presidential Unit Citation, and also the Meritorious Unit Citation.
All right, I'm going to pick up these uniforms that you've got laying over here, and I'll ask you to make a little explanation.
Okay. One more thing.
Okay, yes.
Just staying on Vietnam for a minute. While I was at Fort Benning, I not only was an MOS of aircraft armament specialist, but they said, Bauer, you're going to helicopter school. They sent me, Bell Helicopter sent a team to Fort Benning. I spent 2 weeks studying the helicopter in order to be able to understand enough about the aircraft to help the crew chiefs in combat. And I got every dirty job that they didn't want to do. No, all kidding aside. But when I flew door gunner, this is me in the right door. The crew chief sat on the left so you could see the tail rotor and things of that nature. Have an M60 machine gun on my lap. Our ships had 4 M60 machine guns on each side on flexible pods that could move, flexible mounts, and then we had 7 rockets on each side of the aircraft. And our main mission was to provide suppressive fire to keep the enemy's head down while the assault troops in the unarmed helicopters landed. That was our main mission, plus other things that we did.
Now what makes that picture special to me is that when our son was a teenager, he walked past that picture probably 3, 4, 5 times a day where we had it hanging. And one day he came in and I was in Daddy's den, and he said to me, "What is this picture, Mom? Is this one of Daddy's buddies hanging out the door with a machine gun?" I said, "No, Chris, that's your father hanging out the door with a machine gun." And he went,
Quite an interesting thing.
It was a fun ride.
There was a little more respect after that.
These boots here are my original combat boots from 1965. And after my first pair of boots wore out in Vietnam, the supply sergeant issued me another pair, and I just brought them home with me.
Now, on the inside, you have your name and your service number.
Yep.
And when you were in basic and AIT, you were issued 2 pair of boots.
Yep.
And they put a white dot on
So you're
one pair.
Supposed to rotate them.
And you were supposed to wear them one day, wear the white dot the next day. And if you were in formation and your feet didn't match the rest of the battalion, you probably were making little rocks out of big rocks somewhere for a while.
Yep, you were digging a hole.
It's fortunate that you still have your leather boots.
They'd have you in the hole.
The first thing that we're going to hold up here is a raincoat that has been made out of an Army issue poncho. And these things also doubled as a tent. You had half of a tent with you when you had your poncho, and these snaps would fit like both sides. As you can see, it snapped there, but then something else would also snap on here.
There's also a zipper in that would keep out the rain and the...
Yeah. So you took this into the town and had it made into a...
They put a liner in it and all that kind of stuff. Give you a little bit of warmth.
And
it can get cold in the Central Highlands.
And besides that, they have a thing called monsoons.
Yes.
And this kept the upper portion of your body dry, but from your waist on down, you were soaked wet and the water would run out of your boots. Now, the people in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of good tailors, but their size, this is probably a medium or a large in Southeast Asia. We don't fit in these too well, and most of the time it's tight.
Not anymore. There was a time when I did.
This is what his name would be in Vietnamese.
Lee Van Bao.
All right, and then this next one is the official Air Force jacket, but he being in the Army is a pretty good story there.
In the 11th Air Assault Division, we were permitted to wear flight gear. And I was, of course, a PFC then, my name. I was aircraft armor in the Army. And we used to participate in air mobility exercises with the Air Force, and we'd all show up in this flight gear, and those guys look at us, "Hey, we can't get flight jackets, and these guys got them."
Yeah. Well, there is something to be said for being somewhat of a selected group and the hard work that you have to put in
Now,
to do this.
it's orange inside, because if you were ever forced down, you would reverse that and put that on, and they could see you to pull you out.
Yeah. The green kind of blends in with green water.
Yeah, that's right. And once we got orders to go to Vietnam, all flight gear was recalled. We had to turn it all back in. We could only go to Vietnam, officers and enlisted men, in fatigues, in green fatigues. You could no longer wear this after we went to Vietnam. But I sent mine home to the fair Bonnie.
Now, he had suggested that they were wearing these after hours, after duty hours, sort of around the base
Yeah,
there.
that's not regulation.
No, and the sergeant basically said, perhaps you should take this off and put on your regular uniform to keep you from being shot. So these are called tiger fatigues. I guess I failed to see where a tiger is, but maybe the striping pattern is.
Yeah, they're tiger stripes, and they're different patterns from different years, and that's one of the older ones. We went to Vietnam in 1965. They call us the first shift in the CAV. We were the first group to go over, and some of them call us the boat people because we went there by boat. They didn't fly us over. Now, they did fly us home. I got to fly home.
Okay, you mentioned the boat, and the name of that boat was the Alexander Patch.
General Alexander Patch.
Can you explain a little bit about him and his...
When they'd fly over the rice paddies, and the women would have machine guns under their skirts, and the women would stand up and raise their skirts and try to take the copters out of the sky.
I actually saw a person, he was hoeing. He wasn't in a rice paddy, but he was hoeing something, cultivating something. And he turned, and the handle of the hoe aimed at the helicopter I was in, and he fired off one round. It was a single shot something or other. Maybe homemade, maybe not, but you know, everything that we did in Southeast Asia and in the Army today, in Afghanistan, Iraq, you don't know who your enemy is exactly.
Right.
And the good thing about this is there's so many good people in those two countries, all those countries.
Yes.
And that's why we were primarily in Vietnam. We were basically protecting the Vietnamese from terrorists. People that would come down out of the north and steal the rice, you know, and the Vietnamese farmer, he was only concerned about feeding his family. They would conscript these people. I don't know if that's a good word. They forced them to become slave labor. They wound up in the NDA Army or something like that. So our function was to protect the population from terrorists. And for the greater part, we did that. I'm sure we did. But politically, it was a pretty tough war.
In 1965, we were placed right in the middle of the Central Highlands at An Khê because the VC and the North Vietnamese were about to cut the country in half. They put us right down in the middle of it and says, either way you want to go, boys, they're all yours. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
And we defeated them at Play Me Special Forces Camp, Save Play Coup. I participated in that operation, and also in the Ia Drang Valley, where we faced off against two full North Vietnamese divisions and defeated them. And
I think it's been said many times, on the ground, we never lost a battle.
Nope.
We lost that war at the 6 o'clock news. You know, I still have mixed emotions myself about, I felt that I was doing my part for my country. I felt that I was doing something for humanity. But when the politicians get involved, your thoughts and my thoughts, your thoughts, they go out the window.
The war was micromanaged, and there were things that they did, just like you were in my area after I left that area. And what would happen, and especially you may have walked into the same valleys that I did, and you were ambushed because you didn't know. We knew that was Happy Valley, and you reconnoitered that by air first. You didn't just walk in there. And this would somehow escape the next group that came over, and they'd get whacked in the same place. And that was the futility of it, the tremendous loss of life.
One of the things that I know was said many times, I wish I had thought of saying it, but in the daylight we controlled the war, the nighttime Charlie controlled the war. And it only takes one or two or three people doing something to create a big problem, and it hampers 50 men, it hampers 100 men. But the good thing about that, we were with people that now we trust our lives with, and we still feel of them as brothers.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Strangers before we left, brothers when we came back.
The sad thing was the way they were treated when they came back home. And thankfully, Len had a family that, when he came home, I don't know who told the press about it,
mhm.
but there was a crowd at the airport, and there were photographers, television photographers, and everything, and of course, you never saw so much love wrapped around one man in your life as with the family there.
Sure,
you know.
absolutely.
But I was so happy, and it wasn't too long after that they became so
Veterans-
mistreated and so hated.
Veterans start
you know.
receiving less than welcomes.
Yeah. I had friends that basically took their uniform off in San Francisco, went and bought civilian clothing because of the mistreatment. I personally never took my uniform off. I figured whatever happens, but I never had any ill effects.
Mm-hmm.
I had the same thing. I had a loving family, and I had a bunch of people in Seattle who I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
were praying for me. I happened to make the acquaintance of a young lady up there, and she had been in a convent. Well, unbeknownst to me, she's got 75 or 80 nuns praying for my safety, which probably
Yeah.
solved a lot of problems,
Yeah.
made my life a little easier but anyhow, we're going to go now to your family after you came back from Vietnam. And did you actually get out of the service in Vietnam?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so
I-
your
I
time up was
actually
right over
ETS'd
there,
over
and then
there.
they put you on an airplane and you were a
And
civilian.
of course, then they say, okay, then we'd like to keep you around here. They want me to extend. We'll bump you up one rank. You'll get a promotion. If you still want to go to officers candidate school, we'll make sure you get the officer. I mean, they gave me the big pitch. I had what was called a critical MOS,
Absolutely.
which I was to find out what that was later, even more then. But I had a bunch of close buddies. By that time, we had gotten
This is
gunners over from the infantry. I supervised those guys. I checked their weapons after they clean them. It was their responsibility to clean individual weapons. I check them, and even in the dark, I could feel a bolt, a rotating bolt in an M60. I could feel a burr on it with my finger. I carried a jeweler's screwdriver in my pocket. I'd file that down. And I said, it's going to be fine. And things like that. I touched, and they got to me the night before I left. Said, if you're not on that plane out of here tomorrow morning, we're going to knock you out and put you on it. You're going home to your bride. Because I had gotten married in December of 1964, halfway through the service, because I knew I was
Mm-hmm.
pretty well going to be sent overseas. So we were married, and I said, yeah, I got to get back to my bride.
Part of
So-
the problem with that was that my mother was taking provocative pictures and sending them to him.
Well, that entertained the guys in the hooch. Speaking of hooches,
Therefore, they decided he was going home.
not everybody knows what a hooch is. A hooch is where you live. I don't care if it was a hole in the ground or a building. That was your hooch. That was Vietnamese talk. But we were in pup tents for the first 4 weeks we were there. We didn't get our tent each for 4 weeks. But then when we did get it, we fixed it up. We stole the steel planking from the fixed wing strip. We made a floor. We covered it up with mats. We had mosquito netting up inside. We didn't have to sleep under individual mosquito bars. The medics actually came over and said, yeah, you're good to go. That was the armament tent. That's where all the armament guys were. We had a generator. We bought fluorescent lights in the village, and we had lights and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like a family. I had spent Christmas there. Somebody sent me a little Christmas tree. It was our little bitty Christmas tree we had sitting up in the middle of the hooch. That was it.
Yeah.
And everybody would share if they'd get a care package, which was usually packed in popcorn. Then you ate the popcorn. You ate the packing. We did not have a PX. We did not have armed forces radio and TV at that time. That was not. It was like World War II. I wrote letters, didn't I, Bonnie? which
I still have them.
we still have the letters.
Wow, that's great.
She has the letters, and boy, I was an unhappy trooper at times. I was wet. I think I went 14 days without bathing. That's the longest I could make it. And I think I took a bath.
And that's even amazing because he used to irritate the heck out of me because he was the cleanest man I ever met in my life. I'm sure it was easier to pay for his food than it was for his water.
I'm
sure in the monsoon you can't.
But I didn't realize that went back to what he had just gone through.
Even if you're in a monsoon and it's raining 23 hours a day, you can't take a bath.
No, it's cold. It's cold in the central house, especially at night.
Yeah.
And we took sleeping bags with us. You won't need a sleeping bag in Vietnam. It's hot. I don't think so.
No.
I took my sleeping bag and I slept in the sleeping bag. Sometimes we'd actually take it to a forward area, be behind an M60, because all we had was ARVNs out there. ARVNs were Army Republic of Vietnam. They were indigent troops. They weren't our guys.
Hello?
Did you shut that?
Got a lot of noise. Hang on a second.
Tell him about the accidents that almost took your life
Oh
before you
yeah, I
ever
was
left the
almost
States.
killed 3 times before I left the States.
Well, welcome to the Army.
Anyway, just one more thing. You'd mentioned about trading. I had a chance, we took a ship down to Quy Nhon, it's on the coast,
Yes.
for some upper echelon maintenance, something that they couldn't do at On K. So we had some free time, and a buddy of mine and I, a gunner and I, we went into town, we got a hotel room, and, ate a steak dinner and all this kind of stuff. Vietnamese food, you weren't supposed to eat it, but we ate it anyway. But to get back, we had to go over to the air base and get a hop with the Air Force.
A milk run.
Yeah, they had C-123s and all that they'd fly into On K, they'd sit down just long enough for people to get off, and then they'd head on to Pleiku or Bam Matuit or wherever they were going. But we're waiting, see, outside the ready room. Here comes a Special Forces sergeant, a Green Beret, with several Montagnards with him, and they're pushing a skid. They don't have a loader or anything. They were just pushing it. They got it right where they could load it, get a forklift under it and load it and put it in the aircraft. On this skid, stacked at least 4 feet high, was everything from 30 caliber machine guns, BARs, Thompson submachine guns, carbines, everything. And I'm looking at being an armorer, I'm quizzical about that. And he said, I said, yeah, I'm an armorer with a cav. And he says, I'll tell you what, buddy. He says, I'll give you anything on that pallet that you want for a flak jacket. I left my flak jacket back at On K. I'd have had a Thompson submachine gun.
Isn't it amazing though?
We had flak jackets because we flew. We'd fly with a flak jacket on, a steel chest protector, and we would sit on a flak jacket. So we were issued more jackets than we needed, but you had no other armor in the aircraft.
Right.
There's an old story, you can't dig a foxhole in a helicopter. And I have a round upstairs in my, and this is one of the reasons why I stopped gunning. I have a round upstairs in my collection, I brought it down, where a round came into the aircraft. I had an ammo box sitting right here. A round came into the aircraft, impacted into the ammo box, and split the round that it hit. If that would have been a few inches higher, I'd have been singing soprano.
I would think.
If I had to still be alive.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's an interesting story. And it may have been the end of your family life.
exactly.
But now let's go to that point. You've got children,
One
child,
child.
and it's a male, a son.
Yeah, I came out of the Army, and I went right, but they held my job for me at the loan company.
Mhm.
Went back to the loan company, and I'm thinking, nah, it's not, I have a family now, gotta be something, has to be something better than this. My old boss that broke me into the business comes walking in. I said, hey, Bobby, what are you doing? He says, I work for Fifth Third Bank. Well, it was the Fifth Third Union Trust Company then.
Yeah.
I said, what do you do? He told me what he did. He says, man, I says, there's ever an opening up there. Would you give me a call? The next day, he says, Len, you better get over here quick. There's an opening. My lunch hour, I went over there. I was standing tall in the personal loan department of the Fifth Third Bank when they were still down at 4th and Walnut.
Mm-hmm.
They hired me on a handshake. I was there 30 years.
Well, that's
Pays
great.
to have
That's
friends
great.
in high-paid places.
Yeah.
Uh,
And now you're going to celebrate 50 years of marriage this December.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's been, I'd say, a good life for
But
you.
I'll tell you about the 50-week leave. You know what a 50-week leave was?
No?
Okay. I'm out of the service. Spent a year at Fifth Third Bank. We're going to decide what we're going to do on vacation. This would be in 66 or maybe summer 67. I think summer 67. I get orders in the mail. Report for duty.
Summer duty.
2 weeks summer camp at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, attached to a reserve outfit out of Hagerstown, Maryland. Critical MOS. And the bank, I had to take my vacation, 2 weeks vacation to do that. That was my 50-week leave, and I was back.
I see. Okay, 50-week leave.
Back on
I guess
duty
I
for 2
had
weeks.
similar to that. I wound up being redrafted to be with the Indiana National Guard. Now, the Indiana National Guard probably are as good as anybody, but they were not a combat outfit, and they were guys who were trying to not be in combat. And I also had a critical MOS, and that's why I wound up with them. I had been a chemical, biological, and radiological
Okay.
NCO,
Yeah.
even though it had nothing, that was the slot that they promoted me into. And that might have been the worst 2 weeks of my military career, because they did not have any appreciation of what could save your life and what couldn't.
No, it was,
So that's interesting that it's called a
Fortunately for-
50-week and then a 2-week.
fortunately for me, I met a lot of guys that I knew that came into the same outfit. Wait, what are you doing here, Bowers? What are you doing? I said,
Was that when you got the poison ivy?
no, the second year. Okay, we go up to, I think 68, and what are we going to do? We're going to go on vacation. No, you're not. Here comes a blue envelope in the mail. Report to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So I was in charge of a security platoon playing war games down there at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Well, you know about. So I had to go out and I'd set up a defend an airfield, and I had a concealed position and all that, and I camouflaged myself with leaves, and I was behind an M60, and I had my guys out on either side of the road. We stopped a full bird colonel. I was going to put him down in the full leaning rest, but he kept moving forward. I said, halt, identify yourself. And he did, and he said, all right now, where in the heck are you? He did his little saltier language. I says, if you'll look down at your private parts and look straight ahead, you'll be looking at the barrel of an M60 machine gun. He says, I'll be a son of a gun. he was from me to you away, and there was like a little copse of trees there where the trail kind of split, and there was the M60.
Well,
He slapped me on the back. He thought it was pretty funny. But what happened, I had poison ivy. I was laying in poison ivy and didn't know it.
defending the country.
I swear. So I don't miss Fort Campbell at all. And I didn't say a word about it because, if you had anything wrong with it, they'd keep you.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything about it. We drove back home, and I had to call into the bank and say, I can't make it in.
It was awful.
I was
I've
out
never
for
seen-
another 5 days
Oh, wow.
till I cleared that stuff up. I had it all over me. And that's the way it goes.
Now, you probably still have extended family in Dayton, those of you. The city of Dayton is a lot different than it was when you were growing up.
Very much so. And no no actual family there.
Oh, I see. But anyhow, it's,
So we spent a lot.
I want to
time
ask you
there.
something about the first person that was a casualty in World War II. Is that correct? Who was from
Yes, that
Dayton?
was my mother's youngest brother. His name was Edwin C. Burlew Jr., and he was the first Navy man in World War II to lose his life.
His
He-
middle name's Edwin after him.
Yeah, my middle name is taken after him. I'm Leonard Edwin Bauer.
And was his name spelled B-E-L-E-W? or-
Burlew, Burlew. Edwin C. Burlew Jr.
And was he on a boat when he was
Yes, he
killed?
was in the United States Navy Armed Guard, which I'm an honorary member of. I'm a historian for his ship.
Mhm.
These were naval personnel that they put aboard the merchant ships to man guns and protect the ship. And he was a gunner. His last station was, of course, the Navy Armed Guard Center in Brooklyn, New York. They put him on a tanker with 66,000 gallons of British Admiralty fuel, sent him out across the Atlantic, and the ship was never heard from again, lost with all hands.
Yeah.
He was 19 years old.
Well, it's a pretty tragic thing, but the irony of it is the Germans controlled pretty much the Atlantic Ocean until late in the war.
Yes.
And when we figured out how to outmaneuver their submarines and things like that, but there were a lot of ships that they left the port and they would have radio contact 2 days or something like that, and
Well, they had to maintain radio silence, so
Right.
nobody, if they didn't report where they were supposed to be, they were, and he was considered missing. I think the day she died, my grandmother expecting him to come walking into the door, that he
Right.
had amnesia, that sometimes happened, he'd be in a hospital someplace and come to,
He
oh yeah.
researched the
Yeah, I've done quite a
submarine
bit on
that
that.
actually,
Yeah, I even know the submarine that knocked him
and
off.
actually, didn't you talk to the commander,
His daughter.
his daughter?
Because the commander, his submarine was lost in almost the same spot.
In almost the exact same spot where the ship
A
had been
couple of months
blown out.
later.
That submarine with all the German sailors on it
And I interviewed a
joined him in
gentleman.
heaven.
There was an armed guard on that vessel. His crew got off the vessel when my uncle, they turned it right around. It came back, he made 2 trips to England, they turned it right around and sent it back out. And his crew relieved this fellow from West Virginia. I traveled to West Virginia and spent, he's gone now, but I spent 2 days with him. He told me everything about that ship.
isn't that amazing though, the paths that your life takes that you don't expect, and the people that you meet as a result of your military experience,
Yes.
like the gunner that had left that ship. He was not in the same time frame as you, but you're sharing a story connecting a life.
Yes. There was another gunner, I spoke to him down in Florida, and I followed up on this
We've
story.
had some fun vacations.
He
going
was
around
supposed to
finding
go
these
on the
people.
ship, and he missed the ship. They couldn't find the ship. They didn't know, it was supposed to be New Jersey, it was probably already out in the bay.
Mhm.
They couldn't find it. He missed the ship, and you know, when you miss your ship in the
That's
Navy,
bad news.
that's like AWOL in the
Yeah.
Army. But he thanks God every day.
Yeah.
And
I think we're all indebted to all servicemen, especially those who have been in war zones. I think now there's getting to be more of a recognition that the 1% that's protecting the other 99% are actually treated a little bit better. I know that I've been to a couple of welcome home ceremonies when World War II vets or Korea vets come back in from an honor flight, and it's just an astounding thing. And I personally want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for the courage and basically the good news that you've given everybody connected in your life. It's quite an honor to meet you.
I thank you very much, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
So I know you served as well,
Yes.
and it's something. To me, it's God, country, and you know, it's what we're all about. And My great-grandfather came here as a bounty soldier in the Union Army during the Civil War, and that's how we got here. He didn't know from nothing. He said, all right, you want me to come over? They paid him $20 a month, and he got $100 when he got out. So, hey, I'm going to get to go to America. I'll help them out in their little dispute they're having over there.
And in reality, it was a bargain for
Yeah.
him to get here and raise his family, and now you're in America.
That's right.
I always ask pretty much if there was one piece of advice or something that you could pass on to our audience. And it doesn't have to be necessarily connected with the military, just living your life as you have. There's bound to be some philosophy that you go with.
Well, you have to believe in something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
Something bigger than yourself. And to me, that coalesced into one thing, but it was a bunch of different things that kept me going through the whole deal. And that ordeal that I went through, I know a good friend of mine who later became a minister of the gospel and he was a missionary. And he swore he'd never leave the United States again if he ever got back to it safe. Well, he did. Because God had other plans for him. But why did I have to go through all that? But then after I went through other things in life, like my son, when he was 4 years old, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He's 4 years old, he's a baby.
Yeah.
They saw it and on Good Friday, they took him into the operating room. He wasn't up there an hour. The surgeon came down and says, it's gone. That's bigger than me.
Yeah.
I said, Lord, take me, don't take him. And there he was. That's the first miracle I saw. Second miracle, the fair Bonnie that was sitting here, I love to call her, love of my life, my best friend, diagnosed with liver cancer in 1994. She was in the doctor's office by herself. I wasn't there. He says, the doctor says, isn't Len here with you? She said, no. He said, well, I don't think I have a way to tell you this. You have liver cancer. She says, well, what are we going to do about it? She said, if you want to see a miracle, people don't survive liver cancer in most cases. She made it. 20 years.
Good for her. Good for you.
Second miracle.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, I love miracles.
It's bigger. It's bigger than we are.
Right.
And you just have to understand that. And when it comes to the country, and you think back about the country and how this country was founded, it's more than just a country and all the different inventions and things like that. It's an idea.
An idea that most of the world would love to be as good as America, but
they couldn't grasp it.
they can't grasp that
They couldn't
idea
grasp
that
it.
you can be free to do what you want to
You
do.
don't have a king, you don't have no, it's the individual and it goes up. I like to call it a reverse pyramid, where it's not a king sitting on the top and the people all serve. It's the person, and then it goes up like this and it
Spreads out across.
spreads out. But it's the individual, liberty.
Now, I know that you have a lot of memorabilia from your military life and other military things. Do you have other hobbies? I know
Yes,
you've collected a lot of stuff here.
Military history, I have a vast collection downstairs, mostly packed. We lived in Fort Thomas, I had it displayed. But it's things that people have given me from their families because they know I would respect it and take
Sure.
care of it. But I'm getting at an age now where I have to figure out what am I going to do with this stuff. I have a pair of binoculars that a gentleman gave me. There was a signalman on the
One of the aircraft carriers.
the aircraft carrier, and the name just escaping me for some reason, but he was at the Battle of Midway Island,
Wow.
and the carrier was sunk, and he shipped over to the Saratoga. So he kept his signal binoculars, he was a signalman, he kept those binoculars with him. Well, he gave those are in my collection. But I've talked to the guy down at Patriots Point where the new carrier is down there.
Mhm.
And he said, we'd love to have that for our collection. So I have to find places like that. What else am I gonna do with it, you know?
Yeah, in reality too,
I'm not gonna throw stuff I got away.
no, you can't throw it away, and it has significant value. But the good thing is there are military museums that are willing and love to have that stuff because it's one of a kind, or it's the only one that's available or something. That's why our historical society is so dedicated to collecting artifacts and things like that, and stories. If we don't save these things for the next generation, they'll be gone. We have a lot of people who show up, say, my grandfather was in the Navy, that's all I know about him. Well, lo and behold, we may have a piece of paper that has his name on it with when he was drafted or something like that. Sometimes the extent of what we know about somebody's military career is what we read in the obituary.
Yes.
The good thing is you have a lot you've passed on, and this will be shared with a lot of people. I certainly appreciate you taking your time to help us out.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it, and I've talked to a lot of World War II veterans in particular, and I have so many stories. Probably if I start writing them today, I'd still be writing them a year from now, that they've told me, and they've entrusted those stories to me. Fortunately, most of them I can remember. I should just get a tape recorder out.
That would be a
start
good
talk-
solution, a tape
start
recorder, and
talking.
you could just,
Tell them everything they told me and just leave it on
at least
tape,
it'll be somewhere.
on a DVD or something like that,
Yeah.
and get it recorded. So that's a burden as well. I also do amateur radio, talk to people all over the world and all over the country. Have made a lot of relationships in that manner, some military, some not military. Also computer friends and so on. There's a military site called Together We Served. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've heard of it.
Are you in?
No, I'm not.
I will invite you if you leave me your email address.
All right,
I'll
I'll do
send
that.
you an invite, and then if you accept, then you'll be you'll be one of my brothers.
I understand.
If I can, it's all services. Air Force guy, he makes you his wingman. Navy guy, he makes you shipmate. It's all services, and almost all my stuff except my Vietnam pictures, which are mostly slides, and I don't have too many because you just couldn't get film in the Central Highlands.
Yep.
I need to get that stuff up there. So there's permanent record in online. If you Googled me, you'd probably come up with that site.
Well, thank you again. This has been an entertainment for me. I'm sure Lane and our audience that will eventually see this. We will be